You're probably on the fence of buying some AirPods right now, but given the price, you might be wondering how long they last, which is a reasonable question. That's why in this video we'll discuss how battery life gets affected after years of use, whether the sound or ANC quality degrades over time, how software updates impact AirPods, how does the build quality hold up, and how many years of use you can expect out of your new AirPods. Alright, we've got the base, the pros, and the max, so how long do they last? Let's start with the obvious, battery life. When AirPods are new, their battery life is pretty impressive. Apple quotes 5 hours for the base model, 6 for the pros, and 20 for the max on one charge. But as with any lithium battery, they get worse with every single charge. So under ideal conditions, you'd expect a 20% degradation over 500 charges, which is roughly 2 to 3 years for regular use. If you're a heavy user, meaning over 4 hours of use per day, you can go through 500 cycles in just 1.5 to 2 years. Keep in mind, these are small batteries, so going through cycles happens a lot faster than in a phone, for example. Except for the AirPods Max, their battery takes somewhat longer to degrade. Here's the updated battery life expectancy. For the case itself, we can take the same numbers as for AirPods Max, since they have roughly the same capacity. So based on these numbers, we can say that for most users, you'll notice a drop in battery life after about 2 years. By year 3, you might find yourself putting them back in the case more often than you'd like to. Though it's worth noting that even degraded, they last a good amount of time. So if, let's say, you're using them for 3 hours a day, and that occasionally, you wouldn't really notice a change for at least another year. Also, factors like how often you use them, how long do you keep them out of a case, and even the temperature they're exposed to can speed up this degradation. That's why it's better to plug them in instead of charging them wirelessly. The case will also benefit from it, though whether the benefit outweighs the convenience is up to you. Also, it's worth noting that with AppleCare, Apple will replace AirPods batteries for free if the capacity falls below 80% within 2 years. But there's no easy way to check that like you would on your iPhone. Without AppleCare, prices are too high to consider, and it's basically done to upsell you to a newer model. In general, sound quality itself does not degrade with use. The speaker drivers in AirPods are solid state and typically remain unchanged unless physically damaged or clogged. If one earbud sounds quieter, it's usually due to earwax or poor seal, not because the speaker degrades with time. However, active noise cancellation can feel weaker as AirPods age. This might happen due to clogged or worn seals as well, mainly on the AirPods Pro as they're the only ones with an in-ear seal. The silicone seal, especially if you're using the wrong size, may shrink or tear. On the AirPods Max, the ear cushions can collect sweat and lose springiness, which can also result in worse isolation, but replacing the seals should solve the issue. However, a loss in ANC quality could theoretically happen because of a software update. Now, I'm not saying that Apple will decrease the ANC effectiveness to make you upgrade, for that I would need a tinfoil hat, but something similar did happen to the AirPods Pro once. They launched with incredible ANC, but in October 2021, Apple pushed a software update called 4A400, which degraded the ANC quality. But they didn't do it to make you upgrade, as likely as it sounds, they were rather forced to. Because they were using a patented ANC algorithm, which a company called Jawbone Innovations held and sued Apple for. So to avoid infringement, Apple changed the algorithm, which made the ANC worse. But Apple never acknowledged that, which makes me believe that something like this could theoretically happen again, though it's unlikely. But speaking of software, Apple regularly pushes software updates for your iPhone or Mac. These mainly fix bugs, but sometimes also add features. For example, recent updates to AirPods Pro 2 added a new hearing aid feature, and improved low latency for gaming. AirPods Max gained lossless audio quality and ultra-low latency audio support. Apple also enabled custom head gestures and voice isolation on Pro 2s via updates. In general, software updates aim to improve stability, call quality, Siri accuracy, or introduce new features. They don't slow down devices. However, it seems that only the top-tier devices get new features with updates, so that may be something to consider. Typically, you can expect software support to last around 4 to 5 years, independent on the model, in typical Apple fashion. Alright, build quality. The charging case will scuff as soon as it touches air. It just will, but it helps that it's wide, so it's not as easy to see these scuffs. The hinge is solid, I don't see it failing like ever. The lid might feel flimsy though, especially if you're dropping it often, but it shouldn't be a point of concern generally. The earbuds themselves have no moving parts, so wear is mostly cosmetic. But keep in mind that exposure to sweat and moisture can lead to problems over time. Regular cleaning is key if you want them to stay functional for as long as possible. As for the AirPods Max, the ear cushions tend to get oily or linty over time, but they can be cleaned, and they're also modular, so you could buy a pair of new ear pads if needed. Generally speaking though, there are no build quality problems and you should not expect catastrophic failures. However, keep in mind that none of the AirPods are serviceable, they're basically glued in and unfixable, so if something were to happen like you dropping them and they'd stop charging or connecting, your only option would be buying new ones. I've actually seen this happen twice because my girlfriend kept dropping them until they stopped connecting altogether. But Apple replaced one pair for free, and the second time we just upgraded her to AirPods Pro 2s. But of course, solid build quality only gets you so far. What really decides how long you'll keep your AirPods is how long they perform well. So, how long do AirPods last? For regular use, you're looking at around 2 to 3 years of peak performance and 4 to 5 years of optimal performance. If you're a heavy user, I'd shave a year off that. The Max will generally last longer because they have a bigger battery. However, Max users often listen many hours per session, so cycles still add up. But if you want to extend the lifespan, here's a few simple advices. Activate optimized charging, which will help avoiding overcharging. Store the AirPods at room temperature and avoid leaving them on charge for the whole night or in extreme heat like direct sunbeams. Wipe the charging contacts and speaker meshes weekly with a soft, lint-free cloth and a small brush to maintain a solid connection and clear sound. Replace the silicone ear tips every year or sooner if they're damaged to ensure a tight seal and optimal ANC performance. A good indicator that it's time to replace your AirPods is if one or both AirPods last less than 2 hours on a single charge. But if you take care of them, they'll probably last longer than you expect.